Welcome to the reality show. I'm joined today by Michael Liebowitz, Robert Nasser, Gilad Herzfeld. Gilad, you just basically a few seconds ago heard an explosion, which was the Iron Dome system. Uh, what do they call it? Taking down a rocket. And yeah, so hopefully you can be with us for the whole show, but if you do have to go, if there is a siren and you have to go to a safe space in the actual meaning of the term, then yeah, you'll understand that. Yeah, I was going to make a point about how in Israel often the rocket attacks are during the time of the primetime news broadcasts. They want to make an impact. It could be that Hamas is watching the reality show and are targeting you while we're live. Well, it's actually I wish people in the Israeli leadership watch the reality show. I think they would benefit from it a lot more. So yeah, later on in the show we will talk about maybe Biden's visit to Israel and the hospital bombing, which we just spoke about on the Daily Objective. But our main topic, the title of today's show is Israel versus Israelis. And yes, that is a title I took from Dr. Peikoff, who gave a lecture, America versus Americans, somewhere around 20 years ago, around the so-called war on terror. I think it's appropriate today because I hear from what I hear when I speak to Israelis and what I see on Israeli media is the kind of things that some of us objectivists have been saying for a long time. At the very least, there is a consensus that Hamas needs to be crushed, and that caring about things like giving humanitarian aid and so on to the enemy. That should not be taken into account. Whereas the Israeli government has been sitting on basically most of what they've done has been to talk, talk big, but not act as of yet. And yeah, I in this issue stand with the people of Israel. I think they are right. I would like to see what they would like to see happen, and I hope the Israeli government doesn't screw this up as badly as it seems that they will. Gilad, of course, I'm going to go to you first. You are there in Israel. You were on this show last Tuesday, I believe, right? Or was it Wednesday? But anyway, a lot has happened since. Do you want to give us your thoughts and give us any updates that might be useful?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to share that for most Israelis right now, the days are all mixed up. Like it's all a big blur. What is happening? On the one hand, we're dealing with the great trauma that our country went through. More and more people realize that the pain, that the death is closer to them than they thought. A guy who went with me to the same class in high school, he got killed, and many others that I know has been dead. Luckily, no one in my close circle. And on the other hand, we were expecting war. We were expecting to see, some results happening. And it's just a blur of the Air Force strikes and talks about giving water and all kinds of humane reinforcement for the Gaza civilians and obviously also to the Hamas. And as you mentioned, they just shot rockets again on Tel Aviv, where I am. I'm luckily in a safe space right now because this is kind of a basement, so I don't have to run anywhere. But it's just frustrating that they still have those abilities to shoot at us at exact hours. It's 6:30, it's 8 p.m., it's 9:30. Those are the times that they shoot at us, and it's just frustrating that not more is happening.
Yeah, there's what's going on with Hamas, there's also what's going on with Hezbollah, which is Hezbollah is doing what, kind of what Hamas had been doing in previous years, which is firing some rockets, and then Israel responds just to those rockets and keeps saying, Israel says, we don't want this situation to escalate, where, of course, Hezbollah is going to be the ones to decide to what extent things happen in the north, to what extent it escalates. And if and when Hezbollah decides to do something like what Hamas did on October 7th, of course, they have the ability to make it, to do it on a much larger scale. Gilad, what are the thoughts in Israel about the situation up north?
Again, a lot of frustration. It's I think tens of thousands Israeli civilians who have moved away from their homes in all kinds of towns in the proximity of the border with Lebanon. Luckily, we are a nation that we're here to support. Like the civilians of Israel are very supportive to each other, and we're hosting them. Also, big hotels host them, but also private civilians just open their houses for people who had to abandon their houses. Hezbollah right now, it's a different issue. I think most Israelis, they don't have an opinion if they want Israel to attack Hezbollah right now. Israelis right now, on the emotional level, they're just obsessed with let's take down Hamas. And most Israelis are not too occupied with what's happening with Hezbollah. And when they do, they are afraid. They don't want another front for this war. They want Israel to do what it needs to do in the front that is already open.
Yeah, so this is where I think I part ways with the Israeli public, because I do think the wake-up call should have been the wake-up call of the threat of Israel's enemies surrounding itself. We absolutely, Hamas should be dealt with immediately. But I think so should the threat of other organizations. So should the mothership, Iran. I don't think the Iranian regime continuing to exist is a legitimate outcome of this war. But okay, that's enough of my opinion on this. Robert, I don't know if this is really on topic, but you were, I think, somewhat relatively close to where we saw a big rally in support of Hamas a few days ago.
Yes,
what is the view from that part of the world?
Yeah, Rashida Tlaib is she doesn't represent me, but she does represent me, yes. Being right around the corner from Dearborn, Michigan, and Hamtramck, which has their share as well. And these are people, they might as well be in Gaza for all of their ability to see outside of that perspective, that narrative they've got, that Gaza, again, this idea of it being an open-air prison, they've swallowed the narrative entirely. They believe their perspective is exactly that. And it's, I always talk about this as a war of ideas. And they believe something that is wrong, and that's why they act the way they do. But the evidence is overwhelming, and so my moral condemnation could not be stronger as well. They don't know better, but they should and can know better. They are allowing themselves to be blind to the truth. Gilad is talking about, well, I'm in a safe place. The Iron Dome is destroying the rockets they're sending our way. Can 1 in a million of these people, any of these folks in Dearborn, Michigan, or Hamtramck, any of these crazy rallies that Rashida Tlaib is so happy to support, can they imagine in a million years what it would be like to regard as normal the fact that missiles are being shot at you right now? And yeah, you feel pretty confident because we've got up a system to destroy them. These people, they can't imagine. They have no idea. And yet it's an open secret. Everybody knows that this is not a war that started 10 days ago. This is a war that's been going on for decades. Rockets have been fired at Israel from the Gaza Strip from Hamas, from Hezbollah. This war has been going on for decades. It's insane that people would then say, well, the solution is for Israel to lay down its arms. We all know Golda Meir's statement that if in this case, generally the Arabs would lay down their arms, there would be peace. If the Israelis lay down their arms, there will be no more Israel. We should be grateful that it is so hard here in America to imagine what it is like to be under not just constant threat, but constant attack, constant bombardment. And people want to say, well, we're not treating the people in Gaza well. That is insane. I'm sure we'll talk about the hospital and the news reporting on that, but just the fact that that hospital bombing here in the West, we would call that an incident of friendly fire. Oh, we tried to attack the enemy and some of our own people got killed. In Gaza, that's just rote. That's just, well, if you send up enough rockets, yeah, a few of them are going to misfire. A few of them are going to fail. A couple of them will turn back on you or will explode on their launch. And that's just part of the price of doing business. No, here in the West, if that happens, we regard that as a great tragedy and we do everything we can to avoid it. We don't let that kind of thing happen and we don't take it for granted and we apologize and we make public statements if it does. But on the other side, no, they don't even call it friendly fire because it's just, obviously it's not. I mean, their own people, they're fodder, they're cannon fodder. I could go on and I will, but I'll stop here for a minute.
Yeah, I just want to say it's not a few rockets. It's many, many rockets that fall on the Gaza Strip. It's not many that fall on on a hospital where they hide their weapons. But yeah, when that happens, it's not that big a surprise. Michael, your view on Israel's internal issues and the difference between what the people think and the way the government acts.
Well, I think that a lot of these organizations, I mean, the Palestinian organizations and Hezbollah, I mean, going back decades, it had been nice if they got rid of the PLO, the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, Hamas, Hezbollah, and everybody else that is attacking them. And you brought up Iran. I'm not a military expert, so they obviously have far more information than we do. And I just don't know. I mean, how legitimate is it to just say, okay, we're going to go take out Hamas, we're going to take out Hezbollah, we're going to take out Iran? Do they have the capability? I mean, if they could just flip a switch and that happened, I'd say, go ahead, do it. But those actions then have consequences as well, trying to do it. And is that worth it? I mean, I'm not taking a position. I don't know, because I don't know much about their military capabilities other than that they do have nuclear weapons.
Yeah. From what I know, it's not flipping a switch, it's pressing a button, but yeah.
Okay, so say they did that, though. You press a button, you launch a nuclear weapon into Iran, and then it's hitting neighboring countries as well. Now, those countries are getting involved. I mean, it's none of this takes place in isolation. There's a big context. So I do think that Israel should totally obliterate Hamas. I would like to see them do the same with Hezbollah, but at the same time, I would like them to do it in a smart way so that it doesn't then backfire on them and just make things worse for the Israeli population. And I don't know the answer. I don't know how to do that or exactly how it should be done. So
I want to come back on that point, because backfiring on Israel, basically, there are people who will be, and we were talking about this on the Daily Objective, will be mobilized by any bit of information, even if it's made up of nothing. Which is, we saw this from yesterday's hospital incident. People went after American embassies, the Israeli consulate in Turkey. I don't know if there were other Israeli embassies or consulates that were targeted, but the people who hate Israel already hate Israel and already are waiting for that moment. But the question is, the necessity of Israel defending itself, I think, can't be questioned after what we saw on October 7th. Again, I think it shouldn't have been questioned before, but at this point, Israel should be concerned about the international reaction, but shouldn't it be more concerned about what happens if these organizations and the regime that that these organizations take their marching orders from, what happens if they are allowed to continue to exist?
Well, Razi, what happens, for instance, if they do some of these things and the peace that they have with Jordan and Egypt completely falls apart? And not only that, but suppose then the Biden administration, who's in office right now, stops supporting Israel. If Israel loses American support and has to open up a war on a broader front, it seems to me that could bring in repercussions that we're not even considering right now. And all I'm saying is that if I'm the head of Israel, if I'm Netanyahu right now, it seems to me more complex than just, I want to get rid of Hamas, so let's go do it. And I want to get rid of Iran, so let's go do it. There's so many factors that have to be taken into consideration. And I ultimately would rather them get it right than rush in and end up just not getting the job done and making things worse.
So Gilad, I think the sentiment in Israel is actually similar. By the way, my view on the peace deals with Egypt and Jordan is that they never should have happened. If anybody wants me to elaborate on that, send a super chat and I will. But Gilad, how much of this is a concern in Israel? Because I think, historically that has always been, when it was just rockets and there was another round every couple of years, Israel would go on some military operation, and you would always hear, whether it was people in the government or IDF spokespersons, say, our goal is not to take down Hamas. They would actually say this. Nobody's talking about getting rid of Hamas. We just want to, hit them hard and make it, set them back a few years. Now the rhetoric, at least, is strong against Hamas, but again, as I see the situation, it is not fully acknowledging the wider threat. What is, as you see it, the view in Israel?
Yeah, I think that most people in Israel are not thinking about Iran or about Hezbollah or about Syria. They are focused in Hamas and also worried about the Arabs in the West Bank and even Israeli Arabs that may, get infatuated with the hate against us and start roaming the streets. People are scared here in Israel because they know that there could be a mess. There could be running mobs in the street from all kinds of Arab centers in Israel, like the city of Jaffa, just next to Tel Aviv. So people are worried about that. And unlike other conflicts that we had, where there was that mentality of, Hamas, yeah, we need to strike them back, but there are civilians over there. What can we do? Occupation. That's not the sentiment right now. Like, it's not only lip service of the leaders right now who call for the destruction of Hamas. It's the emotion, it's the sentiment of the people here. That's what people want, because it's just like it's the kind of evil that they brought into Israel 10 days ago in that horrific attack. It's so perceptual. It's so it's deep in all of the hearts of all Israelis, and I hope of many others around the world, that as long as Hamas exists on this other side of that small border, again, it's an hour away from where I am right now, next to Tel Aviv, as long as they exist, we cannot be safe. So that's the mentality.
Yeah, so you talk about Arab Israelis, and I also think, I saw some people on Twitter talk about Biden, how Biden's support for Israel is gonna, is a risk in for him politically with the election coming up next year. Robert, I'm definitely not going to ask you this as an Arab American, but as somebody who lives in that area. Where I think the has the biggest Arab American population in the U.S. Is this a thing in the sense that people who would have otherwise, without a doubt, voted for Biden will now not vote for Biden, let alone vote for whatever the alternative is, and we can only assume what that's going to be?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think this will have any impact on that. One of the tragedies, but needs to be taken into account in the planning, as I'm sure it is in Israel, but really in terms of our reactions and our activities, is that memories are short. And all of this is going to look different a year from now. All of this is going to look different on election day. I don't think Biden's chances of reelection are going to be affected by anything that he's doing right. I wish it was. I wish people were more long-term thinking than that, but no, there may be backlash against him. I love that James Valiant's in the chat and says, enough with the backlash crap. That's slow motion surrender. Thank you for that, James. You're absolutely right. I don't think it's going to have that big an impact, especially if Biden actually sticks to our guns and supports Israel, no holds barred, regardless of what advice he's giving Netanyahu, as long as our carrier remains there, as long as our willingness to back that up with action remains there, Biden is going to only win by this. And yeah, there's a big left that's very much against that. The proof that their memories are short is that they think that what happened on October 8th is radically new, a whole new situation. World War III is right around the corner. Again, this war has been going on for decades. And a year from now, this will be in the history books with all of the other events that they do not remember. The only way they can keep that narrative alive, the idea, again, of Palestine as an occupied country, is that they have not looked at the history, or to the extent they have, they've forgotten it entirely. So no, I think Biden is absolutely safe in that regard. And my hope is that he remains as militant as possible. In regard to, if I could real quick, I want to give a huge shout out to Bonnie. Bonnie Bertrand is in with a super chat. You've been supporting us all along, both with your contributions and your intellectual contributions in the chat as well. Gail Parker is in with a generous $5 super chat as well. No questions yet. They are just supporting what's going on here. And that means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to all of us on the ARCUK. Thank you for that. If you're not already, folks, we bring up Twitter a lot. Follow on Twitter an account with only 3 letters, IDF. The IDF has a Twitter feed, and they share information in such a way you don't have to wonder whether it's biased. They're putting it out there. Great feed to follow, and to point maybe some of your adversaries to some of their posts.
I thought you were going to say follow Razi Ginsburg, who's been very active on Twitter in recent weeks, but yeah, follow the IDF as well.
I kind of took that one for granted because everybody does, but you're right.
Yeah, on a point you made, the point that memories are short. So I just saw a headline. I didn't click it, but it was Benny Gantz, the leader of a party whose name I forget. Gilad, what is the name of his party? Anyway, it was the main opposition party until about a week ago. Now it is a part of the coalition, with a coalition agreement that is just for the time of the war, and then he resigns. Now in polls, he is a very clear favorite to become Israel's next prime minister. He's gonna, if there was an election today, he would win by a landslide. He said the war will take many months. Now, I don't know what that means, but we are at the end of 2023. This could go into not that far before the election. Certainly, something that people will remember when the debates happen and the conferences happen. And yeah, so do you think this war sort of going on for a while, and America continuing its unwavering support, which I would doubt, but would that actually harm him in any way?
Yeah, I mean, unwavering support? No, it'll be the combination, the same combination that we get, that we are absolute supporters of Israel. And yeah, can we do something about all those sad things that we see on the internet or on television? But especially when you put it that way, I've got to give props. I've got to give some respect to Joe Biden, because he is taking a, if not principled, at least a strong stand. And you're right, it's not necessarily earning him any favors. So I hope he sticks to his guns. I hope he sticks to our guns. At least so far, I won't say impressed. I'm a little surprised in a good way. And a couple more quick shouts out. Wassad is in with a generous super chat. Thank you, John Wass. Always good to have you on the panel, but also good to see your support. And Ashley Shrugged is in with a super chat as well. Again, I know we're not fundraising, but I've got to call out these because we love the support. especially at times like these where, even just throwing a few dollars our way, we're all sticking our neck out a little bit. And I'm proud of you for doing it.
Thank you to all our super chatters. There was a comment that I was going to make and I forgot. Oh yeah, on the point of Biden's support. For objectivists, we hear what he says and it's not what we would say, but we also need to put everything in the context of today's culture, today's political landscape, and who would be better on this. I don't know, in terms of potential U.S. presidents. Nikki Haley would probably be better, but I don't know how likely she is to become president. And certainly in terms of leaders of other countries, nobody is anywhere near as good as Biden on this. So I would definitely like to see Biden support Israel more clearly and in a way that if they do what he suggests, they would actually win the war. You read out James Valiant's super chat, not super chat, but chat, but I was going to read it out because I think it was directed at Michael, and it was in all caps. So, Michael, I'm going to assume this is directed at you, and I'm going to reread it. Enough with the backlash crap. That's slow motion surrender.
All I can say is this: for a long time, I lived my life without worrying about backlashes, and I ended up in prison for 25 years. So you do need to think about the consequences of your actions. The goal here is to eradicate Hamas, to beat Hamas, to get them off the map. What the best way to do that is, I have no idea. But people that are a lot smarter than me, that are a lot better positions, probably know better about what to do. And to Robert's comment about short memories, that's true. People do have short memories. Now, think about this. You end up with a long, drawn-out war that involves the United States and the broader Middle East, and it's still going on a year from now. At that point, the vast majority of American citizens forget about even what spawned the thing, forget about what Hamas did in the brutal attacks on Israel, and now all they think about is, oh, we're at war again. And you absolutely have to be concerned with that backlash when people vote, when people have access to the money that you want, the funding that you have. I would prefer if you didn't have to. It doesn't matter. We want to kill Hamas. We're going to do it, and that's it, and move on. But that's just not the reality of the situation. Again, hold on. I just want to say real clearly, I think Hamas should be eradicated as quickly and as forcibly as possible. But the as possible matters in there, because you want that the goal here is Israeli security, not Israeli bluster, so that they can say, look what we did to Hamas. Yes. And then you end up with worse attacks on Israel 6 months or a year from now.
So let me ask you in regards to Hezbollah. Hezbollah has been firing rockets on Israel. There were, I think, six Israelis killed so far, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 7. And there was some attempts to cross the border. I don't know if any of them have been successful. There have been some drones. At this point, Israel, every time something like this happens, Israel bombs something in South Lebanon. This has been going on for the past week or so. What do you think Israel should do there? Should they continue as they're going? Should completely eradicating Hezbollah be a part of the goal?
I think so. I think that eradicating any group out there that says you don't have a right to exist should be the goal, including Iran. I don't want to be misunderstood because of my, I forget the word I'm looking for. It doesn't matter. But the comments I made before, I do think that the goal should be to get rid of all of these organizations. The problem is you set a goal and then you have to come up with the best strategy to achieve it. And I don't know what that is.
Gilad.
I want to say that, in theory, Israel should, attack all of these organizations that try to destroy it. But to do that effectively, it needs to be decisive. It needs to, for example, in the Gaza Strip, shoot down all of the water wells that they have over there, starve them, make it hell on earth for Hamas, and take the price of whatever number of civilians are going to be, suffering because of that, because that's the price of war. You have to, use extreme measures in order to protect yourself. If Israel would be able to morally be clear on the righteousness of doing such actions, yeah, it can maybe open another front with Hezbollah. But until Israel is clear on what is necessary and what is moral to do in order to defend itself, it cannot really afford another front right now, because it's going to be another area of civilians and more pressure from all the other countries and from the United States. It's just not able to open another front because of our moral understanding of the situation.
Gilad, I wanted to ask you something else. So Israel, has been not acting to its fullest abilities, to say the least, in Gaza. So far, we are in day 13 or 12 of the war. And, Israel has recruited 360,000, last I heard, reserve soldiers. We see, and this is why I think the title is appropriate here. We see planes full of people, young men mostly, coming back from vacation or whatever to enlist. People want to be a part of this war, want to be a part of the victory in this war. This is what they're coming back for, and we hear some voices, come out from soldiers being disappointed that nothing is happening yet. This brings me back, and Israel can say, we're planning the attack and so on. But of course, Hamas has been planning their defense from long before. From as soon as they started planning their attack, they were planning their defense. To what extent is this a case maybe on Israel's leadership side of, thinking memories are short, maybe the people will, get over it to some extent if we wait a bit more?
I don't believe people can forget what happened in Israel. There's no way. People are traumatized. The pain is everywhere. It's just it's not gonna go off the memories of Israelis for decades. It's no way that any politician or anything like it, nobody can brush this away.
All right, I want to go. I think we'll probably have more to say about the hospital incident than Biden's visit. But if does anybody have any thoughts on Biden's visit? Did you see any of his statements? Any of the news around that?
Well, so far I'm impressed. I hate to use that word talking about Joe Biden. He is the worst old school pragmatist, unprincipled, but it's precisely because he's old school that he is in line with supporting U.S. allies. And in this case, he's doing the right thing, and that is good. Given who he is, I'm not counting on much. I'm not expecting him to stick to his guns, but so far so good.
I, on the other hand, got the impression of him trying to convince Israel to tone things down, to make sure that human support is going into Gaza and supporting us, but making sure that we're not going to do too much, that we're not going to go to the extreme means of not giving water to the people of Gaza when they are shooting rockets and trying to kill us. So, it's good that he's supporting, but it's too reluctant.
Actually, Gilad, I don't mean to put you on the spot, so you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but if you had to rate the performance of the two leaders, Biden and Netanyahu, from 1 to 10, since this attack happened and until now, what would you rate them?
I cannot testify too much about Biden, but Netanyahu, it's clear that it's a very low number. God, you are the prime minister. You promised you are supposed to be Mr. Security, and look what happened under your command. And he's not taking responsibility, is pointing fingers to others. He's obviously still very much preoccupied with his political survival. He wants to stay in command after, so he's preoccupied with that. It's just, he's not doing what a leader needs to do at this time. And that's putting the country ahead of you and taking responsibility for the mistakes that has been done.
So does he want to stay in command? I mean, he obviously wants to, but does he actually think there's any chance? Because I mean, you don't having a transition now between prime ministers would be an issue, but I would expect. I'm actually a little bit surprised that no statement has actually come out saying, at the end of this, I will go. So do you think there is any chance of him actually staying after this is over?
Sadly, there is. Many of the people who supported him before this incident are still supporting him. I went to, life still goes on in Israel. So I went to get my hair cut a couple of days ago. And the hairdresser, she is pro-Bibi, in her blood deeply. And it's evident that it's still in her blood. She supports him. So I assume many others, other Israelis still have that impression of him. That said, but it's not the end of the world, because there's still the clarity of everyone, including the people who support him, that we need to protect ourselves and we need to take down Hamas. So Bibi has to do something extreme against Hamas in order to actually survive as a prime minister.
Yeah, I mentioned this poll that I think was on Friday, where the party led by Gantz gets 41 seats in the 120-seat parliament, which is a lot by Israeli standards. Israel has never had a government that wasn't a coalition. No party has ever gotten the 61 seats you would need in order to govern alone. Netanyahu's Likud party got 19 in that poll. I don't know what they have now, but it's more than 30. And it's looking back at that, it's a major drop, but it's actually a little bit of a surprise that 19 that they would still get 1/6 of the vote, because even people on the right would go for some other party, you would think. Michael, your thoughts on Biden's visit, on the leadership of Biden or Netanyahu, or both?
From what I saw, I got the impression that Biden said, we give you our support, but then they're putting pressure on Israel to give humanitarian aid. And ultimately, I think they're going to be calling for a de-escalation at some point. I'm not too confident in anything Biden has to say. I do have a question about Netanyahu, though. I've been reading that Netanyahu and the Israeli government have actually funded Hamas and propped them up so that they could be a counterweight to the government in the West Bank. Is there any truth to that?
They certainly founded Hamas. I'm not sure. Yeah, now I don't know. I don't know how to respond to that. I don't know.
Funded Hamas in what way? You mean in the early days, in the very early days of Hamas, or
as far as I could tell, up to within the last 10 years or so? That's what the claims are. I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I Googled it and I've seen conflicting articles on the subject.
I mean, Israel does provide, I don't know if this is what is meant by it, but Israel does provide the electricity and the water and, humanitarian aid, not just allows humanitarian aid from other countries, but provides its own aid. In that sense, it definitely funds Hamas because they know where that's going. I don't know about direct funding, Gilad, if you know.
I think what you're talking about is the fact that the Palestinians in the West Bank are more, in many ways, more peaceful than the ones in Gaza and Hamas. So the right-wing politicians in Israel, they kind of hope that if we're going to make Hamas stronger, we're gonna be able to have the excuse of take control over more territory, and like in some ways you want your opponents to be as violent as possible, because then you can actually use force against them. So I also heard all kinds of rumors about such foundings and incentives, but I don't really know.
Well, I'll answer your question, Razi, about Netanyahu like this then. If that's true, that he took part in funding Hamas for whatever motive, it was a gross miscalculation, and I would say get rid of him.
I mean, so the idea that you fund them because the more violent the enemy, the more you have a justification. I mean, so where now you have the justification, where is the action? I think I've heard this before. I heard it with the US. They're only saying that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction so that they can go in and take over the oil. It's been 20 years. When will the oil be taken over? I don't know if this was some long-term plan that we don't know of, but yeah, I don't know. I'm skeptical. But let's talk about the hospital. The incident that happened where a rocket by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the second largest terrorist organization in Gaza, they fired the rocket. They fired a bunch of rockets. One of them exploded. Bits of it fell on a hospital where Hamas was holding their own rockets. There was a massive explosion. Many people died. The immediate news after that, Hamas themselves said Israel bombed this hospital. 500 people died. They immediately released the number. This was immediately reported as news around the world. It took Israel about 2 hours to counter that with the facts and the videos. That hasn't really landed in many places. It is still blamed on Israel. Robert, you're in the U.S. How is it seen? And again, in a particular part of the U.S. where support for the Palestinians and Hamas is higher than in most places. How is it seen over there?
It depends on which news you're reading. Fortunately, what I'm seeing in the news are headlines like IDF again calls for people in northern Gaza to evacuate south. And everybody sees this much of it. And if they're just willing to put two and two together, it is obvious that the IDF is prioritizing having as few civilian deaths as possible. Now, we know, everybody knows, that also means that there are combatants who are going to escape their actions as well. Nobody should deny, nobody can deny with headlines like that. The IDF makes that part of their calculations. We are willing to let a certain number of militants go in the name of trying to protect non-combatants. The idea that Israel would intentionally fire on a hospital is just bizarre. Now, those of us who are more militant would say, well, you know what? If under that hospital, that's where the tunnels are that they're firing the rockets from, then those deaths are on on Gaza's hands. And that is our calculus on that. But the point is, even for your average mope out there, your average radical in Dearborn or Hamtramck, Michigan, this news is out there. There's no question about that. The hospital bombing was friendly fire. It's clear now that that was the case. The videos, as you say, are out there showing that. Some people don't want to hear that news. Some people will never look at that news. They'll see that headline and say, yeah, I don't need to read that story. But the information is out there. The news is out there. And again, there's an asymmetry here. It is just obvious that Israel is trying to win without killing innocents. Just, we see the cartoons where you say, oh yeah, the Hamas is putting up babies as human shields while Israel is trying to protect babies. And the facts just ring true. It's all true. It's in the headlines. As biased as the news is, it is breaking through. And how anybody doesn't get, if people don't get that, they don't want to get that. They don't want to understand the truth behind that. You don't have to go to the IDF for that. It is in the headlines. It's just obvious that a solution to this is within reach. If Hamas wanted to end this war, they could end the war. That just end it. And yes, there would be reprisals. There would be things that would happen, but this is entirely a war that is in Hamas's hands. If Israel wants to end this war, they've got to end Hamas. They've got to end Hamas in Gaza. And obviously Hezbollah in the West Bank is going to be the next issue that needs to be resolved. You know that I'm in favor of a one-state solution. Israel needs to be Israel. We don't need separate lands within Israel. We don't need protectorates. We don't need governments that the Arabic population would find more palatable. The country simply needs to assert control over the country and honor and respect the individual rights of everybody. The only thing that makes that impossible is they don't want individual rights in Gaza. They don't want individual rights on the West Bank. They want a caliphate. They want an Arab state. That matters to them more than peace, more than the lives of the innocents, more than anything even close to what we would call individual rights. Even people in Hamtramck and Dearborn, Michigan, can see that whether they want to acknowledge it or give it any weight or not.
Yeah, as you mentioned, like this is regardless of how we think Israel, there might be a way we think Israel should fight this war. There's also the way Israel does fight this war, and bombing a hospital is not within the scope of things that Israel even considers doing ever. And Hamas, on the other hand, they hide their rockets in hospitals for two reasons. One is they know Israel won't bomb that is their safe space for weapons. Nobody's going to bomb it. And the other reason is if some accident happens, this is great PR for them by their standards, by the standards of their the people who aid and abet them in the West. Nobody questions the hospital when the person running the hospital is doing a press conference surrounded by bodies. This is not something that needs to be done. If there are deaths and you need to report the number of deaths, you can say that. You don't need the bodies, but of course, nobody questions that. They don't question them on it in a press conference. They don't question them on it on TV because they want to have a presence in Gaza, and you can't question Hamas if you're going to do that. Michael, your thoughts on this?
I don't think Israel bombed the hospital. I don't know. It doesn't, like you said, it's just even if it had nothing to do with morality, from a purely pragmatic position, it doesn't make sense to bomb a hospital if there's no weapons stored there or there's no tunnels or anything like that. Why would they do that? They're not idiots. They know what the blowback would be. So it doesn't make sense. It's not in their character. It's not in their history, and it's illogical.
Gilad, you are in Israel. You know how this is viewed and reported in Israel. You've seen, I'm sure, how it's reported elsewhere.
Yeah, the sad reality that Israel, as it bombs a lot, drops a lot of bombs on buildings in the Gaza Strip, but the sad reality is that it still asks civilians to evacuate many buildings before it attacks. That's the sad reality. That means that you may have a building with 10 stories and 1 or 2 of them is used by Hamas. And instead of shooting down the building because there is a military target over them, we give them a call, we ask them to evacuate, the civilians go away, but also the Hamas operatives go away. So the actual value of that bomb has dropped in, who knows, 50, 80, 90% of its value just because we asked them to go away. So that's one thing that is very sad that still happens. Second thing is that Israel did attack probably not this hospital, but it did attack hospitals and schools in the past, because, as Michael mentioned, there are in many of them rocket launchers or rocket warehouses, all kinds of infrastructure of Hamas. And it's just said to me that the world, for a second, instead of realizing that, like, at the first moments, they thought, okay, Israel did attack, instead of realizing, oh, we do have evidence that Hamas again and again and again hides rockets in hospitals, and how fucked up, sorry for the language, is that. Instead of having that reaction, immediately they are, oh no, civilians are dead in a hospital. But again, the blame is on Hamas, even if it was Israel, even if it was really true that Israel has bombed the hospital. And the last thing that I wanted to say was about something that Robert mentioned about, I think, if I understood you correctly, we're talking about Israel taking control over the entire territory and establishing a state with individual rights for the Palestinians. That's part of the challenge here in Israel, that it can't really be done, because Israel has got to remain a safe haven for the Jewish people. And in order to do that, it has to have a Jewish majority. It can have Arab citizens, and it does have 2 million of them. And they really are equal in front of the law here in Israel. But we can't have 5 more Arab citizens in Israel, because then Israel won't be Israel and won't be able to do what it needs to do for the Jewish people around the world.
Yeah, I may have missed that. Robert, did you say Israel should take over Gaza and the people there should have full individual rights?
Yes, and I totally understand what Gilad is saying. I just don't see how. What then is the future? What is the alternative? What is the outcome? How do we drag these people kicking and screaming into the 21st century?
I mean, all right, I'm going to just answer quickly, and then Gilad, you can answer. Yeah, I obviously disagree with the idea of people in Gaza having, any type of, Israeli government protecting their individual rights any time in the foreseeable future. But one thing I would like to see Israel take over the Gaza Strip in such a military operation that also changes what Gaza is. And in a way that, again, if Israel did what I want them to do, many, many people will die in Gaza. And others should be, in many cases, encouraged to leave and never come back. And so the population would be smaller than it is now, and they would live under some sort of military control for a long time, until we know that people there are civilized enough that any rights that are protected by the government aren't going to be used for the purpose of slaughtering Jews like they did on October 7th.
I second all that.
Michael?
I don't know what the solution is. Oftentimes in life, there just is no solution. And I think it's human to look for them. But I agree that if you made it a one-state solution, Israel has a large welfare state. Are they going to start taking care of the Palestinian Arabs too, and giving them health care? And also then you take away the sanction or the sanctuary that Jews have in Israel. But at the same time, I see what Robert's saying, that the two-state solution doesn't seem like it's possible. Maybe there's just no answer. And that sucks, but that's what happens sometimes.
Well, on that positive note, yeah, I look forward to the comments. I guess there's not time to put them in the live chat, but comments maybe in the comment section of this video about my ideas for Gaza. I'm expecting some memberships to be canceled over the next few hours, but hopefully not. And yeah, we will of course be back here tomorrow not at this time, actually at this time, 5 minutes from, 24 hours and 5 minutes from now, we will be back for the Daily Objective. As of now, the topic for that is America's Enemy Within. We will be talking about Roberts, Congresswoman, and similar people. And there will be an episode of the reality show right after. There will be episodes of the Daily Objective on the weekend as well. And a new video on the Briefly Objective, our other YouTube channel, which if you're not subscribed to, you should go ahead and do that now. We have a bunch of videos on there already that we've posted since this war started. A new one will premiere tonight at, I believe, 10 p.m. UK time. It's not at our normally scheduled time because of an event we have with Yaron Brook here in London this evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to our viewers, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow.